An elderly man was led into an apartment. His face was bruised and a black blindfold covered his eyes. As he entered the room, one of the masked kidnappers struck him on the legs, causing him to collapse to the floor, where he was immediately subjected to further blows. When the man regained consciousness and opened his eyes, he was blinded by the intense light of a lamp. He found himself bound to a chair, unable to move, with his hands and feet tightly wrapped in tape. A voice emerged from the darkness. "Do you want to live? Tell your son. For 10 million, we will let you go." A hand holding a mobile phone appeared in front of his face, and the recording began. The father pleaded for his life, instructing his son to give 10 million rubles to those who showed him the video, or he would be killed. This was the beginning of a horrifying story that would claim several lives and instill fear in the community. Rumors circulated that the devil himself was involved in the series of deaths, as the bloodshed occurred on a significant Orthodox holiday, the night before Christmas, January 6, 2008, Ulyanovsk Region, Tsilninsky District. On that frosty evening before the holiday, 27-year-old traffic police inspector Ivan Ignatiev was preparing for his shift. His mother, Anna Alexeyevna, walked him to his car. She still can't shake off the inexplicable feeling of dread she had for her son that night. She blessed his car and wished him a safe shift. At the same time, Ivan's colleague, 23-year-old Yevgeny Levendeev, also left for work, accompanied by his father. While the young men went to their duties, their parents headed to church. It was Christmas. The young traffic police officers began patrolling the district. During Christmas Eve, when churchgoers gather en masse, law enforcement works in heightened mode. At 5:30 in the morning, there was a knock on the Ignatiev's door. Relatives, including Anna Alexeyevna's elder son, stood at the threshold. The painful news was delivered. Ivan had been killed. The dreadful message also reached the Levendeev's home. From the field report, on Christmas night in the Ulyanovsk region at the 165th kilometer of the Tsivilsk-Syzran highway, the bodies of Tsilninsky District traffic police officers Yevgeny Levendeev and Ivan Ignatiev were found in a Vaz 2114 car with gunshot wounds to the head, chest, and torso. At the crime scene, experts found numerous spent bullets and casings. Footprints of at least 2 people were discovered near the vehicle. It was immediately clear that the attack had been sudden. The policemen had weapons but didn't get the chance to use them. The thorough examination continued throughout the night. In the 30-degree frost, under the light of flashlights and car headlights, experts inspected every square centimeter. Traffic police officers stopped all passing cars, hoping to find witnesses. In nearby settlements, detectives visited every house. By early morning, the initial results were reported at an operational meeting. The first theory linked the crime to the victim's professional duties. The officers might have stopped a car with a drunk driver or someone transporting drugs, potentially provoking a conflict. However, investigators had no direct evidence to support this theory. In professional terms, the crime had been committed under conditions of uncertainty. Other scenarios had to be considered. Perhaps it was personal animosity, but what enemies could young guys have? Yevgeny was known as a kind, sensitive person. No one had a bad word to say about Ivan either. He was dating a girl, and they planned to marry in the summer. However, there have been many cases where seemingly friendly, empathetic people turned out to be scoundrels. Maybe Ivan and Yevgeny led double lives, engaging in illegal activities while wearing their traffic police uniforms. Investigators had to consider this possibility too. Unfortunately, in the eyes of many Russians, the image of a traffic police officer is far from ideal. Today, it's more shocking to hear an officer rejected a bribe than accepted one. Increasingly, criminals within the ranks of the traffic police are being exposed, having turned corrupt practices into a routine. For example, in the Astrakhan region, an entire traffic police unit was prosecuted for extorting money from drivers at checkpoints. Their illegal activities were well coordinated. Every month, each of the 3 posts contributed 150,000 rubles to the unit commander. Following a sting operation, 19 officers were caught red-handed and subsequently convicted. In Chelyabinsk, traffic police officers were charged with fraud. They created fake documents to validate fictitious road accidents, then used intermediaries to file these documents with an insurance company, receiving payouts for non-existent accidents. The damage to the insurance company exceeded 3 million rubles. Moreover, even the positions within the traffic police were sometimes bought and sold. In Rostov-on-Don, a platoon commander sold a lucrative post to a fellow local for 300,000 rubles. Following the transaction, he was dismissed and sentenced to 2 years in prison. The investigation into the murder of traffic police officers continued with all possible scenarios being explored. The detectives had their first leads. Ivan Ignatiev, one of the victims, had his mobile phone stolen. The phone was immediately put under surveillance in the hope that someone might use it, allowing the cell service provider to track its usage. Additionally, a witness to the crime came forward. The witness had been driving on the ill-fated road that evening and saw 2 police cars and a private vehicle. 2 individuals dressed in dark clothing stood between the cars. Who were these people? Why did they kill the officers? One thing was clear: if they committed a double murder, they were likely involved in serious crimes. Ballistic tests revealed that the officers were shot with IJ-71 pistols. This weapon had been stolen during a raid on a post office in Dagestan, where a large sum of money and 4 pistols were taken. Were these criminals from the Caucasus terrorists? What were they carrying when the officers stopped them? Ammunition? Explosives? If the detectives' theories were correct, more victims could follow. The regional authorities took special interest in solving this case. All individuals previously convicted of weapons charges were questioned. Intelligence reports on local and regional criminal elements were compiled. With the help of cell service providers, the location of nearly every suspect at the time of the murders was established. The investigators analyzed recent crime reports, finding one incident of particular interest. 2 days before the officer killings, businessman Vladimir Dolganovsky, 64, the general director of Scala LLC, disappeared under mysterious circumstances in Ulyanovsk. He left his office on January 4th and never returned home. His car, showing signs of a struggle, was found abandoned in a nearby village. The city was preparing for elections, and Dolganovsky's son was a candidate. Could the kidnapping be connected to this? However, the kidnappers had not made contact or demanded a ransom. Dolganovsky's son, Vadim, offered a reward for any information about his father. The detective's instincts suggested a connection between the businessman's kidnapping and the officer's murders. A decision was made to coordinate the investigations of both cases. Urgent news arrived from Dagestan. Ivan Ignatiev's phone was active again. A team was dispatched to Makhachkala immediately. The phone had ended up with a young girl whose mother had bought it from a pawn shop. Following a chain of transactions, the detectives identified Magomed Musagajayev and Shamil Gadzhiev, who had traveled from Ulyanovsk to Makhachkala the day after the murders. Investigators quickly gathered dossiers on the suspects. Magomed Musagajayev, born in 1977, had been convicted of extortion in 1997 and lived in Ulyanovsk with his wife and 2 young children. He was known to have connections with militant groups, specifically the Gimri Jamaat. Shamil Gadzhiev, born in 1982, was the cousin of Musa Gadzhiev and had no prior convictions. However, Law enforcement had linked him to several high-profile crimes across Dagestan and other regions in Russia. He had received combat training in North Caucasus terrorist camps and had been living in Ulyanovsk for the past 3 months. Everything fit. The weapon traced back to the Caucasus, the timing of the suspect's flight from Ulyanovsk, and even their appearance. Witnesses described seeing men in dark clothing, one in a long coat, the other in a short sheepskin coat. The description matched perfectly. It was also revealed that Magomed Musagadziev had worked on the construction of Vladimir Dolganovsky's house. The detective's intuition proved correct. The kidnapping and the murders were connected. Final proof came when Musagadjiev's phone records confirmed his presence at the crime scene during the murders. A special operation was launched to apprehend the suspects. Police special forces and FSB operatives meticulously planned the arrest of Musagadjiev, given his ties to terrorist activities. He was cornered in a residential building, and the raid began. On May 15, 2008, Musagadziev was arrested in Makhachkala after a gunfight with law enforcement. Weapons and explosives were found in his apartment. Shamil Gadziev managed to evade capture. Sensing danger with almost animal instinct, he fled to the mountains. During interrogations, Magomed Musagadziev claimed he neither shot the police officers nor kidnapped the businessman. Instead, he pointed the finger at his cousin and accomplice, Gaji Aliyev. Musagadziev naively believed that his partners were beyond the reach of law enforcement and that he could easily shift all the blame onto them. However, it wasn't long before Gaji Aliyev was apprehended. Aliyev was informed that Musagadziev had confessed and betrayed his comrades. This ploy worked. To reduce his own sentence and get back at the traitor, Aliyev began to spill the beans. He admitted to personally killing businessman Vladimir Dolganovsky and also implicated another gang member, Ildar Zabirov. Realizing the game was up, Zabirov too decided to cooperate with the authorities. Soon enough, their leader, Musagadziev, followed suit. The investigation finally pieced together the full picture of the crimes. Musagadziev had come to Ulyanovsk seeking a peaceful life. After serving time, he aimed to leave his criminal past behind. He got married, had 2 children, but struggled with stable employment, relying on odd jobs instead. Fate brought him to the construction site of Vladimir Dolganovsky's cottage, but he didn't stay there long and eventually quit. In the summer of 2007, Musagadjiev's cousin Shamil Gadziev, a member of armed gangs, paid him a visit. Gadziev sought refuge in Ulyanovsk after several audacious raids, including an attack on a post office where they stole 4 IZH-71 pistols and over 1 million rubles. Gadziev brought the weapons with him and hatched a plan to kidnap businessmen for ransom. Musagadziev agreed to the plan, immediately recalling his wealthy former employer, Dolganovsky. The cousins enlisted 2 more accomplices, fellow Dagestanis Gaji Aliyev and Ildar Zabirov, and set their criminal plans in motion. Their first attempt to kidnap Dolganovsky just before New Year's 2008 failed when one of the accomplices chickened out. But the gang tried again shortly after New Year's. They captured Dolganovsky, beat him and stuffed him in the trunk of a car. They held him in a rented apartment in Ulyanovsk, demanding a ransom from his son, also a successful businessman. They forced Dolganovsky to record a video plea for 10 million rubles. The disappearance of the well-known businessman sparked a media frenzy. Vadim Dolganovsky offered a substantial reward for any information about his father, making the kidnappers wary of staying in the city. Musagadziev had a good acquaintance, a local mosque's mullah named Ozod Kushmatov, who had a large house and wouldn't arouse suspicion. They decided to seek his help. They planned to move the captive on Christmas Eve. Under the cover of darkness, they put Dolganovsky in the trunk, taping his mouth shut. They chose a route that avoided a police checkpoint, which only raised suspicions. Traffic police officers Ivan Ignatiev and Yevgeny Levendeev stopped the suspicious Zhiguli. It was obvious that a law-abiding driver wouldn't bypass a checkpoint and take a dark road. Musagadziev stepped out, showed his documents, and tried to bribe the officers, saying he was in a hurry. When they refused and directed him to drive to the station for inspection, Musagadziev offered an even larger bribe. His brother Shamil Gadziev joined in the persuasion, but the officers refused again. That's when the gunshots rang out, killing the officers. The gang continued their journey and soon reached the mullah's house as planned, locking the captive in a bathhouse. The next day, Musagadziev and his brother left for Makhachkala, leaving Gaji Aliyev to watch over the kidnapped businessman. A month later, Aliyev, unnerved, killed Dolganovsky and buried him in the cellar. After disposing of the hostage, Aliyev fled to Dagestan, but was soon captured and brought back to Ulyanovsk in handcuffs. The body of Vladimir Dolganovsky was found exactly where Aliyev had indicated. Finally, the businessman's family could lay him to rest. 3 men stood trial: Magomed Musagadziev, Gaji Aliyev, and Ildar Zabirov. Shamil Gadziev, hiding with militants in the mountains of Dagestan, remained at large and was declared a federal fugitive. Mullah Ozod Kushmatov, who provided a place to keep the hostage, also vanished. Authorities found literature and videos promoting radical Islamism in his home. Musagadziev was sentenced to 24 years in prison, Zabirov to 12 years, and Aliyev to 19 years. The jury's verdict was delivered. The judge pronounced the sentences, and the convicts were led away by the guards. What about the families of the deceased? They are left with nothing but tears. Even the harshest sentence won't bring back the sons laid to rest by grieving mothers. Their homes are now empty, filled only with the creaking of beds and medication bottles on the coffee table. The energy to go about daily tasks is gone. Once, those homes were alive with music, loud footsteps, and the laughter of sons who grew up too fast. Now their feet carry them to the city cemetery, seeking solace near their children. Recently, news broke that fugitive cleric Ozod Kushmatov was arrested in Uzbekistan. He managed to evade capture for so long using fake documents. Now, he faces 14 years of strict imprisonment. Meanwhile, Shamil Gadziev remains at large. But that's a different story entirely. To stay updated on new stories, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and leave your comments. Your feedback is important to me.